Hi, and welcome to Shooting the Shit with my guest, Josh Hendrick. And why don't you tell them what you do?
Okay. I am a custom home builder, and we do custom renovations, custom home building, and then we do a lot of commercial work. So one way that we love to serve our community in Nashville is by doing home studios. We love the musician community in Nashville. And so none of us are musically talented. So there's only one way we can help them, and that's by building home studios.
Which is a very, very helpful thing for us. So very much appreciated. It's one of the more essential cogs in this industry to have.
Well, it's growing in popularity too. I don't think there's so many musicians that are, you might have an idea at like 2 a.m. or something like that, where like when that brain, like that spark of inspiration happens, and what are you like? You're going to hold that inspiration and try to get into a studio when you can schedule an appointment, or you have it at your own home. Yeah. And you can just go and immediately record a cool track.
Also like setting everything up too. Cause like I don't always have everything just like set up. So I have to like set up the mic, set up the system, turn everything on and make sure all the wires are crossed correctly. And then by that point, the idea is it's basically not there anymore, or it's not like what I originally had in my head, I guess.
Right.
So
well, it's two different from brain functions. You have the technical function of setting everything up and making sure I have everything correct. We just spent the last hour setting this room up for a podcast. Yep. That wasn't our creative side. So the other part is the creative side. That's that spark of inspiration that like you're doing something that is adding to the world. So.
Yeah. I love the inspiration and finding a piece of paper and writing it down as soon as I possibly can, or getting my phone. I guess like the best thing I can do is really get a voice memo. I think a lot of musicians probably have hundreds to thousands of voice memos of just the most random shit. Just like little like nidbits of melodies or a lyric where you're like, this is a great lyric. Come back to it, or it just sits there forever and ever and ever.
But you never know when that inspiration is going to hit, and that might be the one lyric that creates a song.
Yeah. So would really like to know how you got into your job in the first place. Like what brought you there? What were your steps?
Our steps. So I did home flipping for a long time. So I did a number of homes in the Middle Tennessee area, and then I went to work for a commercial investor. So I did a lot of large commercial buildings. I flipped a 115 unit apartment complex, and it's great. But my whole beginning of my career was always for investors. And then I met John, who's the owner of Stellan Owen Builders, and he was just different. He was Amish until 2010, and just the way he thinks, the way he acts, he has this genuineness about him that you don't really see in society a lot. And there was something about him. I was just like, man, I really like being around this guy. Like we'd have conversations for like an hour on site and stuff like that. So I was trying to show someone else his work, because his work is beautiful. Like he is one of the most talented builders I've ever met. And I was trying to show someone his work, and I was like, hey, let's see if he has a website. And I looked it up. And it was the most awful website you could imagine. I mean, this is something that like I wouldn't hire the guy off a Craigslist type website. Oh, no. And so I told him the next day, I was like, hey, I think you need to take your website down. It's hurting you. And I could just see like a spark where, it's like something in our relationship changed. And I was like, oh man, did I hurt his feelings or something like that? Right. I was just trying to help him, be honest. Well, the next day he's like, come work for me. And then I was like, no, I've got a great gig. Why would I leave this to go work for somebody else? And he stayed after me for about 6 months. And I knew that what he was doing was really interesting. He's doing all custom work, custom home building, custom renovations. So finally I was like, hey, I'll come do it. And he brought me on as his operations guy. And that's what I've been doing for a while. Just got moved up to running the company. I'm very thankful that he's given me that much a trust. We've built one of the best teams in Nashville. My production side and my pre-construction side, I fully trust them, and they're wonderful guys. And we get to do really cool things. Not every builder gets to do music studios. And so I'm really excited that I get to partner with artists and like kind of dream with them. Like we don't get to dream as builders,
Yeah.
right? We're so technical side. So hearing people's inspiration and hearing people on what they're really wanting to accomplish, it's so fun for us. It gives us a lot of life and energy. And our tagline is we build around your why. So every client, the first time we meet them, we ask, why do you want to do this? Because that's important, because there's going to be 1,000 opportunities to compromise in this job. And if we keep your why forefront, then when we finish your project, we kept that real core concept of what we're trying to accomplish. And you're going to be so much more satisfied with that project. And so with musicians, what we've learned is like, hey, why do you want to do this? Is it demos? Is it like you're about to release a track? And understanding that has really helped us to where we can give them the product that they're really wanting to do.
Yeah. Do you feel like compared to like what you did do, this gives you more creativity? It gives you more of you get to use kind of both sides of the brain instead of just one?
Absolutely. Working for investors it's really, it's wonderful that the two men I got to work for in my career are some of the best people I've ever met. Just really good men. And so, but it's also, you're always looking for that return on investment. You're always like, you're building it for the investment side of it. And then with the music, the last music studio we got to do was in a basement and ended up being just 400 square foot. But we were able to give them 400 square feet.
God.
But we were able to give them a place to fully record, like a full sound booth, and kind of a writing room within that 400 square feet. It's cool. It's really funky. It's purple. I mean, it's so different than what our usual work is that it ends up being some of the most fun work we get to have.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that kind of takes you in a challenge, right? Kind of gives you a little challenge to see what you can do with such a minimal amount of space. How do you get the sound where you need in a space like that?
You have to really completely reimagine the space. It can't, if we can move walls, we really need to rebuild all the walls, because how we build our walls is so technically different than more normal construction. It has to be have the same structural quality as a normal wall, but we have to build it wider and we have to do all these extra things to make sure that you're not getting the sound transference between two rooms, or it's absorbing enough sound where it's not bouncing back into, like, especially the booth.
Yeah. That's got to be a small booth.
It was 6x8. So, you can either have one or two in at a time, or the band really has to like each other. So, and it's just, we partner with a lot of different designers. Like I said, we're phenomenal at the technical aspect, but when it comes to colors and when it comes to layouts and all that stuff, we always want to partner with an expert to give the client the best result we can. But also there's different price points, right? So if someone's just, hey, I want an entry level, like here's my budget, how much can I get for this? Then we're going to have a starting point of like, okay, we may not use a designer, let's pick out some cool colors. Let's try to do this in-house, because I have a draftsman in-house, somebody that can draw everything out.
Oh, cool.
So we can pull everything all the way back to a starting point, because you may just want to throw out some demos, right? I've got ideas. I want to put those ideas into other people's ears, right? We have a product for that. And then you might want something all the way to, you're building a detached building from on the property, and it's got, every actual producing quality that, your studios in downtown have.
Yes. One of my producers was actually, he had a barn in the back of his home, and it was just full decked out. It was the coolest room. I guess he must have had someone that designed it, or I can't remember if he and his father helped make it and design it. And I was like, this is awesome. It gives you all the space you need, and did a fantastic job with it. So that's definitely something that I've seen done, like going, taking it instead of having it like in one room, like it's just like a whole barn, is pretty cool what you can do with just like different spaces.
Oh, it's amazing, because if I can build from scratch, then it's so much easier, because then I can make really almost any dream come true. I just have to stay within different setbacks and city restrictions.
Right. Do you ever do like custom, like even like the furniture and everything in it as well, just to make it even more?
So I do have a studio designer that we've used in the past. He describes everything as rock and roll. And my joke to him, he and I were having breakfast the other day, and my joke to him was like, yeah, you're rock and roll. I'm more like talk radio. And he got a kick out of that. But so he will actually pick out furniture. He'll even go to the point where he'll put your whole recording booth together with all your equipment and your computers and your soundboards. He'll make sure we run all the wiring correctly, so that way you can truly just plug in the booth, and then it's already set up to where you're running your soundboards and all that stuff. So, you know, our goal is to make sure we're having a true working booth and a true working production side. If that's the price point, and if that's the end goal that you want.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Red Bicycle Germantown. It's more than a coffee shop. The staff feel like family, the food is out of this world, where you'll always get good coffee for a good morning.
There was something interesting you said that I would love to ask you more about.
Yeah.
So, and maybe this isn't part of it, I don't know. But when I do my own little like recording and stuff, and I set up my whole station, everything like that, my little set picks up radio, and I can hear it I can hear it in my ear, like I can hear it through my headphones, but you can't actually hear it through the mic going through the system and the system in GarageBand and things like that. But I'm just so confused. I'm hearing country music in my ear while I'm trying to like record my own song, or like mostly I just do demos, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, is it a frequency? Is it something where I'm plugged in somewhere? And so like the plug, I think you said something about like, if you have a plug for a certain thing, that if you switch it.
Okay. So, and this was coming from a, kind of like pre-conversation that we had before the podcast. Yeah. So I was talking about with electrical and different wiring in your booth. You want to make sure that it is separated from everything else in the room. So I want to have dedicated circuits in that room, because you're still going to have amps and you're going to still have things that you have to plug in that booth, right?
Right.
But you also have your data cables and your cables for all your instrument and stuff like that. So we want all of that separated into the booth, because if I'm running, you know, a mini fridge outside the booth, that is drawing electricity, and that is going back and forth between the power source and the plug. And if I have the booth, if it's running off that same home run, then it's picking up that frequency, moving back and forth from the fridge outlet to the booth, or to the breaker panel, so like the source of the power. So that's why we want everything in that booth independent from everything else, because sometimes it doesn't matter. Like you said, like, hey, I listen to the tracks and I don't pick it up, but I hear it. And even that little distraction can distract an artist.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure when we do a booth, if we have the ability, if we're going to like, hey, this is beyond demos, we want to make sure that we separate and have everything independent from all the other electrical sources, cabling sources, and everything else.
Yeah. It starts to like ruin the mojo of being in that inspiration. And I'm like, oh, I have this idea. I'm ready to get it down. And then you know, I'm pressing all the buttons and make sure all the wires are right. I'm plugging everything in. Something's not right. Something's plugged in wrong. The gain isn't up. Like, you know, you're testing everything. And then by that point, it's just like, what was my idea again?
Right.
And you know, plugging in the MIDI or plugging in the guitar. I've always had issues with like just plugging something in, and it just doesn't work for a good like 10 minutes, and I'm like, screw this, and I walk away.
Yeah.
So it's like so important when you have everything just set up and ready to go, because then you lose the one thing that you actually wanted to. Yeah, the one thing you were originally doing.
Yeah.
And it just gets so frustrating.
So I will take it one step further than this too, because you mentioned engineers. We want to think about the engineers in the design studio, or in the studio design, because they're the ones that are behind the scenes putting everything together. So we always get an engineer to advise us on how to set up the storage of equipment. It's kind of out there, but I want to make sure that an engineer is like, hey, if you want to go to a home studio to help this artist record, how do you want it set up? How do you want your cables wound? How do you want them stored? What's going to make it easy for you to go in, set up, put it back, and then leave? Because you're paying that person for their time.
Yeah.
So if it's organized and it's not just a rat nest of cables and everything, it makes it so much more efficient for him to come in or her to come in, grab everything they need, set everything up. I mean, it could be, 10 minutes to an hour, which is a lot of time. Like, you're paying for that time.
Yeah.
So we want all of our storage to be very organized, dedicated to that space, and make sure that we have an engineer speak into what that should look like.
Yeah, that's good. What other people do you kind of bring in?
So we partner with, your studio engineers, we partner with producers, and we partner with studio designers and internal designers, interior designers. So yeah, sorry.
No, yeah.
So interior designers. Yeah. So with those 4 people, what we can do is we can figure out, okay, is there noise that is there that shouldn't be there? And then are we trying to make noise that we can't find? And then does it look like a space that you want to be in, right? You don't want to go into, because most booths are going to have like a place to sit outside the booth. You don't want to go in that spot and it be sterile. You're just like, it looks like it is the most corporate waiting room you could ever imagine. We want that space to feel really good and kind of funky, like somewhere that you can just enjoy and chill and relax.
Not a doctor's office room.
Not a doctor's office.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I feel like environment really does bring a lot out of people. Something that inspires.
Yeah. And honestly, for us, that can be some of the most fun space to do because every artist is different. So, I mean, you could have, country with a lot of like woods and different things where it's like, has a lot of that like, very country chic personality or something like that. It could be rock and roll. Like the one we just was all purple and black trim. It's got a big moon light. You turn the light on, it's, 4 foot in the side, like it literally has a moon look to it.
That's cool.
I mean, there's just so many different things we can do. And it's all based off of who's hiring us to do it, what they want. Yeah,
that's got to be fun.
Oh, it's a blast.
Yeah.
Musicians are fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
true.
Right?
Yeah. Musicians are fun.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a situation where it was not going well? Like, have you ever ran into like a diva?
Usually that's where a lot of changes happen. And unfortunately for us, that's just where we have to have incredible record keeping. We're just like every time, time is money. Time is money for the artist. Time is money for us.
Yeah.
So if someone's just wanting continual changes, we have to have a starting point and an outline of exactly what that starting point looks like. And then every time we change, we have to document that change. And it's not always a monetary change.
Mm-hmm.
It could just be paint colors. But if we've already painted it and then we have to paint it and then we have to paint it because the color's not right.
Yeah.
Now, if it's our fault, we'll absolutely own it. We will, hey, we went and got the wrong paint or we didn't understand the color. We'll absolutely own it if it's us. But if the artist is like, hey, I know I said purple, but now I want, periwinkle.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, well, that's where we have a signed off selection sheets and say, okay, now it's a change. And unfortunately, we're going to have to recharge you for this paint.
Right.
So yes, there's a little bit of, I don't want to say diva, but if the artist isn't feeling it, they're not going to be, that's not the space they want to be in.
Yeah. And
we want to get it right for them. So we'll keep doing whatever we need to do to make sure that that's the space that they want.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a good company. I always get nervous. I feel like it's like hiring like a moving company, right? Like you never know what you're going to get. It can be a little scary, especially for the first time if you're doing it and you're like, well, are they going to drop my stuff? Are they going to steal? Are things going to go awry? Is it they're going to go missing one? There's always like those doubts in your mind. So to know that you have someone like a business that you feel comfortable and secure with, something like a home studio, which is your baby. It's going to literally be your baby. It's something that you're putting time and effort into. So I always know that, trusting people and trusting companies can be a very difficult thing for musicians, especially as musicians. We're pretty flaky people. I mean, we have to admit, like we're not always the best at things like that or communication, unless it's through music. To find a trustworthy company that is working with you and for the good of you, and like again, help make your baby.
Yeah,
it's huge part.
I tell all my clients, there's a chance we're going to mess up. We're human. There's no such thing as a perfect project. And so the difference is we really care if we mess up. We want to make it right. We own our mistakes always. And then we warranty all our stuff. We have the craftsmanship warranty for a year. Our internal policy is that we want a resolution within a week of understanding that there's a problem. So our warranty program, we want to, as soon as we find out about it, we want to have a full resolution in a week. Now, unless there's a significant issue that is going to have to like tear out walls and drying stuff like that. We've never had an issue that went to that extent, but most of the issues are, this thing here is not working or something like that, where it was a selection change, or this light was working, now it's not working, and, light might go out. So, but we're absolutely going to own and make sure that we get to our, especially warranty items. You can lose so much reputation by not doing warranty. And that's, we're just not going to do that. We want our clients to know that, once the project's done, they're not done with us. We'll come back and make it right if anything's messed up. That's
great. You're able to be a good company for the musicians and the producers and the engineers and everybody out there. And there's a lot of us. I mean, we're in Nashville, so
absolutely.
And I think that it's becoming a huge thing right now is these home studios. I think they're popping up more and more. Do you see like changes throughout? Like, how long have you been doing this for? And have you seen like changes throughout what people need? Are they asking more for like smaller home studios or, certain types of equipment, or like, when they ask you for advice on, this is the space I have, what can I do to utilize it the best?
Mm-hmm. We've been doing this for a few years, and I think the change is more of people want their own space so that way they can record their own stuff. I think the idea of going to a production studio and, you have your scheduled time, and I think there's always going to be a place for that, but it's saying, hey, I need you to put your artistry to where from 1 to 3, you're going to do this. Right?
Yeah.
So like, I need you to go be creative from 1 to 3. And I think what a lot of artists are doing is saying that it's so hard for me to just turn it on and off like that. Where if I had something at home, I could just have friends over and we might get into a session and just be like, oh man, this is like really good. Why don't we go in the booth and see what happens? And I think that's where a lot of people are going towards, is the idea of just, man, I don't want to basically time block my creativity. I want my creativity to come and go as it really flows, right?
Oh, the organicness of it.
And especially younger artists that may not have the ability to just go into a production studio and say, I'm going to record now.
Yeah.
Not every artist can do that. And so, give an ability to give artists the to go record at any time. So what we're seeing is a lot of people are asking for demos is a really popular thing, where it's just like, what can you do to where I can record something to get somebody's attention? And so, and it could be, because there's a lot of different technical ways that we build that we build out studios. So like our walls, we build like a 2x6 top plate, bottom plate. And then we actually stagger all the studs to where they're not touching each side of the wall. And so it gives you a sound channel all the way through. And then we put sound bat insulation in there. Rockwool's kind of our favorite product in there. And then there's also like Z-clips that hold the drywall off the studs. And that creates more, because what sound does is it's a vibration that goes from one end and it'll carry all the way through the stud to the other end. And that's where you start hearing a lot of sound on other sides of the wall, right? So what you want is something to absorb all of that. Right. And that's why in our booths we have like acoustical sound tiles that are fabric wrapped. We change the angles. So we don't want a square room. We want the sound to go in different angles.
Right.
The last sound booth we had has these 8-foot sliding doors, and the doors came from a very specific company that makes them for sound booths. And the glass is insulated in different gaps, and it's not at a correct angle or not at a right angle. So when you install this as a booth, that whole wall changes the sound transference.
God, that's
so
crazy.
yeah, right.
That's
Because
so
the idea is
crazy.
you want the sound to go into the mic and record through the equipment, but be absorbed through everything else. You don't want
it bouncing back
Exactly.
into the mic area. Yeah.
And you don't want outside noise coming into the mic, right? So
Yeah.
that's where noise that shouldn't be there, you want to get rid of, and noise you do want there, you want to capture. And so I think so many more people are going, hey, at what level sound can I get for this money, right? And I'm like, hey, well, we might have to just put a really cool rug down, and that to try to break up the flooring to where you don't have that hard surface there. We might have to do some like egg crates on the walls, or try to get creative on a way to do it way more affordable. But you also have to tell the client, hey, I don't want your expectation to say to go think that you're going to be recording like actual produced this level of construction. Right. Until
it's demos versus, final product.
Absolutely. And so if you want that final product, there's so much more I really need to do to make this sound booth work. But it's also cost associated.
Yes.
Right. There's always a cost for how much you want to be able to produce. And some people are like, man, I've made plenty on like tours and, or off of different singles or something where I want to reinvest this into my company, basically. Like you as an artist is a company.
Yeah.
I want to reinvest it into my future work, and that's where a home studio comes in place. So, I went out, I made this on a tour, I made this on a single. I'm going to take that, reinvest it into my space, and then get a really cool studio. And that way now what I've done is I've significantly reduced my cost if I want to make new tracks.
Yeah.
And sound booths don't have to be that expensive. For demos, you really have to just isolate sound. And so if we can get in there, and even, like I said, the last one we did was like 6x8. A lot of people that have homes in Nashville have a 6x8 space that they can dedicate to a sound booth.
Yeah. I actually once, so when I was living in the West End in the apartment building over there, I had one of those, it was just like a 1-bedroom, but like part of the wall of the 1-bedroom didn't go all the way up. It just like kind of like cut a little more than halfway. You'd have to kind of reach up to get up on the top of there. But what I did is I made myself a little booth by getting a cardboard box, taping the foam to the
acoustical sound panels.
To the top of it. So it was like right over me, like a little ceiling. And then I put like a little shitty rug right at the bottom. And I had my mic stand. And then I took cardboard again and just like put them down. And then again, attached the like foam pieces so I could just go in there and sing and not have it kind of bouncing off everywhere. Because my home, that little studio 1-bedroom was so open that you could just hear absolutely everything come through there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was so cheap. I mean, it was literally just like cardboard boxes and stuff like that, but it worked. It did the job that I needed it to do. After a while, it got a little heavy, and things started sagging, and
yeah. But that was your first booth. You're
was
always going to remember that for
me,
life. You're always going to remember that first booth. So
that was pretty creative. I mean,
absolutely.
yeah.
And then, again, that's why we love working with musicians, because like, I can't tell you how many stories I've heard where like, man, I did this and it worked. And I'm like, cool, if I can not recreate that, but if I like, when I'm building you like a hangout room, if there was any element that reminded you of that first little booth, you're going to have me like, man, that was cool. Like, look what I did with nothing. And now here I am with a full studio, like
with cardboard.
I mean, that's so cool. Like and that's what I love is, the creativity of most musicians that I've met is just amazing. And so they find out a way to make it work, right?
Yeah.
Like this is their livelihood. This is their business. Like they figure it out. And it's just what we want to do is we want to partner with them and just be like, hey, how far do you want to go with this? And, you know, I'll help you figure out how much you can do for what. And let's just make it work.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. And it's nice too, because you kind of get that starting point. You know how they're like, you know, pay your dues and things like that. I feel like I think back and I'm like, you know, I did what I had to do. It might have been like just super shitty. And, you know, I don't think I do it now. I think I have more of experience, but like when you're kind of learning and gathering your experiences, and you're doing the trial and error, it's funny to look back on and be like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe it kind of actually worked.
Hey, music lovers. This is Betty Reed, your host for Shooting the Shit, a podcast to help you navigate the music industry. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to help the podcast grow. And thanks for listening to me and my guest shoot the shit.
Because you probably know, like, if I was to build you a studio right now, you probably know a lot of the elements you want and like kind of an idea of how it would flow, right?
Yeah. If you asked me 5 years ago, I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm throwing everything on you. But if you ask me now, after, you know, going into other studios and doing other people's home studios and things like that, I definitely have a better perspective on what works and what doesn't, at least for me too, which probably makes it easier on you guys as well if we actually have a little bit more of a vision as opposed to being like...
we're dream builders, not dreamers.
Yeah,
so, you know, so once you tell us what you want, we can make it happen. But also... it's our responsibility to tell you what's possible too. You may be like, I want this. And we'll be like, okay, I mean, we can make that possible, but it's going to cost you this much more. But we can do this. That's kind of within your budget. And it's going to give you the same exact result. It just may not look like this. Or like, I can make it look like this, which is really close, you know? So knowing what's possible is so much more power to a lot of the musicians we get to work with. Because, you know, you don't know until you know. Yeah. Which is a very obvious statement, but you know, experience is just one of the most important things. Absolutely. Yeah. I've seen plenty of studios that were built by the musician themselves. Some of them worked, some of them didn't work, you know, and I think, you know, more of our target audience is that someone that's just, hey, I want an expert to come and step with me from the onset of building the studio and giving me this final product, you know? Yeah. So, cause we'd love to get with people early, and then we can even like add on and rebuild and, you know, make it better as we go. We can give you like a basic, you know, booth. And then as you release more, as you grow, as your popularity grows, we can start adding on and building that, like hangout room or that writer's round room. And then we can add in even, we had one where you go through the booth and then there's almost like, we built this like little warm up place where it was literally a little table with a flower, a chair, and that was it. I mean, you can go in, you can warm up your vocals, you can play, you know, a couple of rips on the guitar or riffs guitar. Yeah, yeah. No, the whole non-musician to me, it's coming out here. But it was a place where, you know, you may not feel comfortable or you may be nervous going into the studio. I want to go in here. I want to get in my own headspace. Give me a second. I can, you know, warm up my vocals. I can warm up. I can, you know, and then I'm going to feel way more comfortable coming into the booth. Yeah. So there's so many different ways we can have a starting point and expand throughout your career. Yeah, and then you might sell the house and buy a brand new house and we'll just start over. Yeah. That's the whole fun of it. Yeah. Yeah. Construction can always be redone at a cost, but. Well, yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Jack Brown's Germantown. Nothing like the perfect combination of beer and burgers. With one of the largest selection of beers and unique burgers to try, you'll never be disappointed.
Yeah. No, so we met a couple years ago, and I remember, you know, finding out you're a musician. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then listening to your music, oh, she's like a real musician. Because now there's a lot of people in this town that are amazing and like qualified musicians. And then there's a lot of people in this town that are, you know, pursuing a dream.
Open mic musicians.
Yes. And, you know, when I get to hear one of those that are just, oh, like she's good. Like, you know, cause I'm an Apple fan. I unfortunately sold my soul to Apple a long time ago, but I remember looking you up on Apple Music and I was like, oh, this is like this is listening. Like I can listen to this. Like, yeah. Like I actually had your music on while I drove down to like this podcast just because it's good to listen to.
My favorite is when you were like, you know, when somebody gives you their music and you're listening to it and you're like, wow.
Keep trying.
You did that.
Yeah.
You did that. You know, effort was there.
Yeah.
A in the effort. It's always kind of nice to get that. I'm not going to BS you. I'm not going to bullshit you. I will tell you whether I like it or I don't. And then when they're like, I actually like it, it's like, okay. Yeah.
Oh, and I have no poker face when it comes to that. I'm just like, oh, okay.
You just read it on your face.
Yeah. You could definitely read it on my face. I'm just like, yeah, that was music.
Yeah,
there was music in there somewhere. But I think we're here more to honor good musicians. And
people are progressing, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes there's definitely things I have there that are not great. You progress and you make things better, and that's, this world is rejection. This world is what I like to say is, we all have different tastes. So that's just a big thing. Everyone to each his own, especially with music.
Right.
Yeah. It's a palette.
Yeah. And I'm not here to obviously I can't judge music. But what
you can judge what you like.
I can judge what I like.
Yeah.
And I can judge that, hey, this sounds good. Like I enjoyed this and this sounds good to me. Like it sounds like a quality piece that's been released.
Yeah.
But I just want to help whenever I can, and my gifts are the building side.
Can you tell the difference knowing what something should sound like acoustically, or from when it gets recorded? Can you hear okay, that was definitely done in a really well done studio, or I can definitely hear they did that a little bit more in a shoebox?
So kind of a yes and no question or yes and no answer on that. Like there's sometimes where you're just you can hear a little background noise, or they don't mix the guitar's so much louder than other instruments, or there's differences that way. The other point is, if you don't have the right engineer, things just don't mix well, like weird transition, or the music just doesn't something just doesn't flow into it. When you add in a different instrument, or you can say, okay, well, they added it in here. It was very obvious. And so from a consumer side, that's where the biggest things we hear from, more of your demos or EPs or, is where it's just something, it just didn't feel right to us, where it was just it didn't mix well, or there's, I love hearing this vocalist, but I can't hear her right now because all I hear is the
guitar, the
drum,
yeah.
the keys or whatever.
Yeah. We're mixing and mastering is, that is quite the talent.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's as much of an art as the artist.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you can take
expensive.
I want to know, but you truly can make the best artists in Nashville sound as great or not great with the right engineering.
Yeah.
I actually love live albums, and I love acoustic albums because you can really hear how talented that individual is. Right. Or that band. I love going to live shows. I mean, we're Nashville, right?
Yeah.
So we have some of the best live shows in the world, but that's where you really get to separate just a recording artist versus a entertainer.
Yeah.
Some of the best shows I've been to are people that didn't really know. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this was incredible. And I was entertained the whole time. The music was good. And I'm like, they're live, they're in front of you. Can't, I don't know if you can record and cover a lot of stuff up on stage, but I'd assume that's going to be way more difficult than any type of thing you can do in the studio.
Right.
So that's where,
agree.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where you hear a live album, or you hear more of an acoustic set where it's just a 3-piece, and that's where you're just oh my gosh, you knew the artist was good, but you're oh, this artist is incredible. A true entertainer, that's a workout. I have so much respect for one of the shows I had kind of least excitement about, but I had tickets to, was Imagine Dragons.
Oh, I love Imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was they're good. I like their music, but their lead singer ran around Bridgestone the whole performance. I mean, did not sit still. And I was I'm tired
Yeah,
from his workout. Like
watching you.
he was incredible. Like it was, and I don't think people really understand, like, not only are you performing as an artist and you have your music, but like, that's a workout.
Yeah.
You were physically exhausted by that too.
Who's Maggie Rogers? She did the same thing. I saw her at Bonnaroo. Oh my gosh, she was running up and down that stage. Chapel Roan does the same thing with her leg kicks and everything. And I'm like, all right, you're running on the treadmill while you're singing. It's, you know, definitely doing, and Taylor Swift does that too.
Yeah.
Like you run on the treadmill while you sing, getting that cardio. It's all cardio.
It's
and
incredible.
I mean, and you're using that muscle. The only muscle I have in my body is my singing muscle.
Okay.
It's my diaphragm muscle. Everything else is not. And I need to get back at going back on the treadmill and singing because it's so important and it makes for such a good show. You don't want to just, unless it's like a ballad or something, right? And they're standing there, they're very into it. That's great. But when you're doing that rock and roll or what, like it's so fun to see the artist have fun.
Right.
Would you ever think that you could build a live arena with like the knowledge that you have for how to make the best sounding indoor, outdoor? Outdoor is hard.
Yeah. See, I would love the challenge because, I mean, there's a huge difference in a home studio or even building like a recording studio, like a producing studio, to a full arena, you know, licensing and everything. Like that's all, you know, big industrial stuff, which we're licensed to do big industrial. But I feel like the best, like you think about like some of the best places, Red Rocks, Hollywood Bowl, like those type places, there's a natural element.
Yeah.
Like it's a natural, almost like this funnel to where, you know, the music's going out to the audience in a very organic way. And then not only that, you get the experience of like, oh my gosh, I went to a concert at Red Rocks, or like I got to see this at Hollywood Bowl, or, you know, like,
yeah,
think about the really incredible places. You're just like, so how would you replicate that somewhere? That would be my first thing is I would want to go and like sound like, you know, take some engineers and go through some of these places and just be like, how do we replicate something that is organically made, you know, on Earth somewhere that people can enjoy it on a bigger scale?
Yeah. Isn't that kind of what like the Greeks did too?
Yeah. With their,
with the theater and stuff. And they realize, you know, making the audience up in like that kind of bowl. And that's how the acoustics spread out so that, you know, you could hear it from like a mile away. And
I think that's why like stadium concerts are so popular, because stadiums are naturally built like that.
Right.
But there's still something different about like a intimate concert at a place that's just made, like, I mean, just like, you know, someone stamped this out in the earth.
Yeah. We saw, and I there's some bands where I don't really expect them to be in a smaller space. Like I feel like, especially with their hype and everything, they would be in bigger spaces. But we saw small pools at the basement. Was it the basement? The basement east. It was incredible. I mean, because it's not a big, huge space. It's a smaller space. It was so amazing. All standing, no sitting. And to see a band like that, and you know, there's not a lot of space to move around that stage. It's not a huge stage. And he made it, I mean, they made it work. It sounded amazing. The energy was amazing. And it was so cool to be almost immersed. Like you felt like you're part of it. And I absolutely love that. We also saw the Struts. And again, that is a wild band that loves to take up that stage and have fun with it. And boy, did he every inch of that stage, his foot touched. And like, I love when they come out into the audience and everything like that and really just make it a show that you would expect to see in a big arena, but you get these smaller venues and it kind of makes it like.
Well, it's a level of intimacy you can't replicate on a larger scale. You know, I think that's why Ryman people, you know, it's almost like an honor to see someone at the Ryman. Yeah. You know, that's Nashville's heart venue, right? And so I've seen some incredible bands. I've seen some acoustic sets. And, you know, I don't know if the acoustics are better or worse at the Ryman than anywhere else. But I know that there's a level of intimacy at the Ryman that you can't replicate in a lot of other places.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And we'll see you there one day.
I would love that.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Goals, man. Goals.
I'll be front row.
Yes.
So-
VIP. Are you kidding? You can come in the back. It was really fun chatting with you.
Oh, it was a blast.
I'm so ecstatic that you came, and I think this will be really, really great for people to know because we have every single part of this music industry that people just don't get to hear about. So it's nice to chat with someone about it and get some insight, but also, you know, not like this is this and this is this, you know, like it's just more of a casual fun thing. So
Yeah, it's almost like we're shooting the shit.
oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you for shooting the shit with me.
Thank you for having me. This is the scene, right? Like, and so us as a construction company, we just want to support people and like support the, you know, what we tell people is we serve Nashville through construction because that's our gift.
Yeah.
And so thank you for letting me, you know, be on this podcast. It was a lot of fun and, you know, just telling people how we can support them.
So yeah, thanks for shooting the shit with me. I'm your host, Betty Reed, and I appreciate you, Josh Hendrick, coming on and chatting with me about what you do. And I'll make sure to put some of your info. So if anybody needs a studio designer / builder, they'll know where to find you.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.